Woo! Just sneezed. Is this hat too much? Is it not enough? So I got this hat when my family lived in Wyoming when I was a kid, and the alarming thing is it proves that my head has not changed size since I was in elementary school. That cannot be a good sign. But, and I'm sniffling, like I said, I just sneezed. This is a tribute to all the ranching and farming families in America. Did you know that less than 2% of our population is involved in farming and ranching? Number one, that's a crime. And number two, it kind of proves how little relationship to the land we actually still have. And that's not good. We have to remedy that. That's my advice. So we have 16th episode of Q&A. I have a ton of ground to cover. A trial question here. Let's just do a warm-up. Someone just wrote me and said, what's the most truly evil thing you've ever done? And I said, outside of lying about doing truly evil things, I've never done anything evil. I'm not really an evil guy. I'm much more of someone who doesn't like conflict and tries to try to find decent things in the world without living with rose-colored glasses and ignoring what's right in front of me. So don't have much evil in me. I'm too tired and I'm too old. If like Dr. Evil was on the advanced level age-wise in terms of someone who could really pull that off. There was no Bond villain in their 90s, like hobbling around the retirement center. First question, and I think if I had to gauge today's questions, they would be much more about photography and filmmaking, and there's only 9 of them, but some of these are heavy, like really heavy. First question, does New Mexico have a residue of the Manhattan Project, and have you read the book? Now, this comes from my European friend who now happens to live in Minnesota. So the first question is, does New Mexico have a residue of the Manhattan Project? Manhattan Project, for those of you who don't know, was the making of the atomic bomb, which happened up on the Pajarito Plateau near Los Alamos, where the Los Alamos National Lab is still located. And yes, there is very much a residue of the bomb here. The first testing of the atomic bomb was at the Trinity site, which is in southern New Mexico. And when the bomb went off, they actually thought that they had ended the world. When they saw the mushroom cloud and the glowing orb, they kind of were like, oops, my bad, because they thought they had really ended everything. And they also thought that the bomb would be the end of all warfare because it would be so terrifying that no one would ever fight with anyone else ever again. Sadly, humans have the fighting innately in them, and that is proved evidence every day. So yes, there is very much a residue of that. Los Alamos is still a very active place, plus you have Sandia Labs down in Albuquerque. From what I understand, Los Alamos has the highest paid zip code in America with some of the folks that are working at the lab. And you also have all the toxicity that remains from the testing. I mean, back in the day, they were just dumping toxic waste in the arroyos, and every time it would rain, it would run downhill. And they're still getting in trouble for doing things that are toxic to the environment. So this state has a serious environmental problem that is tied to the Manhattan Project. And have I read the book? Which is this little brief, easy to read book right here is what my friend is referring to. Whoops, something fell out. And it's a card. It was to me, I'm tearing up. So this is a book that will be with me for quite some time. I don't envision reading this entire book in one fell swoop because this is the book I'm reading right now, which, by the way, if you don't know Wade Davis, every single thing he's ever written is great, and this book is no exception. If you like anthropology, archaeology, or botany, this book, One River, is an absolute must. I'm about 2/3 of the way through it, and I have pages and pages and pages of notes. If you like Latin America, if you like South America and the jungles in the Amazon, this book is for you. So I've got to finish that book. Then I have A Terrible Love of War on deck. And then I have a Paul Theroux book, which I've read a few of his books in the past, and I don't know where I got that. I figured I'd get through it. It looks pretty short. Then I will get back to this book. But having said that, within the first 4 pages of the book about the atomic bomb, I learned something completely new. So it is, thank you so much for sending that to me. I will definitely get it, and it is right in my backyard. Question number 2. Hey, Dan. Howdy. Love your videos. I wanted to ask a question about your next Q&A. I hope this is a good place. In a previous video, yeah, this is good. This is about photography. In a previous video, you suggested shooting 6x6, as that would help your work stand apart, and said that shooting 35mm would be tough today. Could you expand on this idea and suggest some ways in which one might go about making a photo project that doesn't get lost in the shuffle? Okay, we're talking about a couple of different things, but the first thing got misconstrued, and that's probably my fault. Just shooting 6x6 will have no impact on whether or not your project gets picked up or promoted or published or whatever. 6x6 alone, medium, let's just throw medium format out there, 6.6, 6.7, 6.9. Let's just take that. Those images and those negatives have a very specific look. And that look right now is very popular. A lot of the hipsters have discovered film cameras and medium format film cameras, and they're running around and taking that. And historically, that's always been a little bit the case. A lot of the fashion photography that was done 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it was a lot of that was done with medium format cameras. The medium format can trick you into thinking your work is better than it is because of the way it looks. I know when I'm in the field, if I'm shooting with a Leica and a Hasselblad, and I'm having a hard day, the light sucks, the subject matter sucks, I'm missing things, I'm sloppy, I'm not sharp. That Hasselblad is a crutch because it makes me think. Anything you shoot with a medium format camera, I could shoot the Louis L'Amour books on the edge of the table at wide open aperture and the fall off is gorgeous and you say to yourself, oh my God, that's a great image. It's not, it's just a basic image from a medium format camera. So it can be deceptive. Shooting 6.6 is not any way to stand out other than the sense that you are shooting a square format. And square format with film now, I mean, when I shot Hasselblad back in the day, there was Bronica, Hasselblad, square formats, but there was no Instagram. So the square format was not like something that was ubiquitous all day long on a daily basis. The key with making a project that stands out is to find a good story and then make the best possible photographs you can make, and you still have the deck stacked against you because the modern attention span in the modern industry really doesn't care about great photography anymore. It cares about metrics. Metrics overpower photography every single day of the week. Last week, I heard 2 more examples out of the mouths of photographers that told me things that they were working on and what their intended destination was and how the projects came about and how the work came about. It had everything to do with metrics, nothing to do with photography. If you want to shoot 6.6, it's fine. It is more exotic than 35. I think working in 35 film, black and white today is very hard to do because it's not sexy, it's not exotic, and it's a hard sell. And when's the last time you saw a great essay, 35 millimeter black and white essay run in a magazine? I can think of one in the past year. So not exactly high demand. I just did another film about notes on photography, and I talked about this very thing. In 1999, I realized there was no market for my work in America. That if I was going to be a long-form black and white documentary photographer, I had to submit my work in Europe, Asia, Latin America. They still had markets and industries. America was gone. It was decimated. And that was 99. Question number 3. And again, I'm a bearer of all kinds of shiny, bright and shiny news. Question number 3. Hi, Dan. Longtime fan here. I'm 23 and I'm an aspiring doc photographer, photojournalist, but I'm leaning more towards documentary as I want the freedom to do my own thing. Some points here hit home pretty hard. Mainly to me, the Instagram social media one. Being 23, I do sometimes feel conforming to some of these trendy photographers who overexpose portrait by 2 stops and take pictures of cars and houses. Yes, I'm with you. And that's okay if that's what they want to do, let them do it. But I want to make images that move people or at the very least make people think. Most of my favorite photographers came up in the 60s and 70s. I don't really look at photographers from this period. And that's probably to my own disadvantage. Probably. Should study everybody. I just can't connect. I have a hard time too because I think a lot of what I see today is a rehash of trends that were popular in the 60s and 70s that modern people just act as if they discovered them and then turn around and they have a base of fans who don't know about the work in the 60s and 70s who are gullible enough to believe that the modern people discovered it. That can be a little wonky. I'm getting to the question. I'm getting there. My question is, how do you make meaningful projects images that you can be proud of? I feel like I can't really be proud of mine if I'm being honest. I know that there's no fast fix and there are just experience and trial and error, but any pointers will do. Thanks a lot. Love from Dublin. Dublin, that's in South America, right? I went to public school. Just kidding. I've not yet been to Ireland, but I will. I'm carbo loading and getting my liver detoxed before I go. Ireland to me has my name all over it. My mother loved to travel. My father hated to travel. Unless my father was going with a shotgun to go bird hunting, he would not go anywhere. But my father loved Ireland and my father loved Portugal. So that says a lot. Not that I'm anything like my father, but it's kind of nice to know. How do you make images and projects that you can be proud of? I think the first step here is we have to take a step back. I think you are looking potentially for affirmation from people that have no training and no knowledge of photography whatsoever. So I think you have to ask yourself why you're doing projects to begin with. One of my most important responsibilities as a photographer, even during the peak of my career, if you can even call it that, I wouldn't call it a peak. It's not a beyond category peak like in the Tour de France. I would call mine a mound, like a burial mound. That would be the slope of my career. The most important thing I did during that period was photograph my own family, because my mother had gotten older and she took her Pentax K1000 in Kodachrome and put it in a box and said, "I'm done, it's on you." So I photographed brother, sister, mother, father, nieces, nephews, cousins, everyone, and I made books of that material. I made books of my mother's poetry combined with my photographs. That is a very meaningful body of work. It's probably one of the most important books I've ever done, and you will never see it, and no one on this YouTube channel will ever see it. It is not for you. That is a meaningful project. If I was trying to do work today that was supposed to impact people in the photo industry, these are the last people on earth I would ever want to try to influence in any way, shape, or form. The photo industry is as fickle as any industry you have ever seen in your life. And it, like I said earlier, it is based on metrics now. So metrics are all over the place, like reading tea leaves. So I would never try to do a project to influence anyone in photography or in the industry of photography. If you're trying to influence civilians or people who are not interested in photography, that's a commendable goal in my opinion. That can be incredibly hard. You have to, again, at the foundational DNA level of everything we're talking about, is practicing photography enough to where you understand what a good photograph is and how to make them consistently. Projects are not willy-nilly. They're not random pictures here and there. It is a cohesive body of work, and that takes a very specific kind of photography and a specific kind of practice. Start small, start close to your home, and choose a subject 100% based on, do you love this subject? Or are you intrigued? Are you puzzled? Are you scared? Forget about me. Forget about Instagram. Forget about the rest of the nonsense out there in the world and do it for yourself. And when you're done, if you're happy with it, then turn around and wait till you're finished. Do not, under any circumstances, share your projects in real time. I had this conversation last night with a contributor to the second issue of AG23. Next week, I will be doing films about AG23, the second issue. It is done. I got my first copy. One of the contributors came through my house last night. She loved it. I'm excited. When a contributor looks at it and says, "This looks really good," the sense of relief that comes from me, it's not even happiness. It is 100% relief. Because again, I've said this many times, I have a responsibility. When I'm publishing somebody else's work, I do every single thing I can to make it good. So she's happy, and she said the same exact thing that we were just talking about. That's my advice. Question number 4, on making these short films, it would be interesting if you could comment on aspects such as, what's your mental process on making a short film? What comes first, selecting images, the music, the written part, etc. So what this question number 4, is about me making short films, which is hilarious. I just started this. I have no idea what I'm doing. And today I have to make 3 films. So it's not like I have a lot of time here. This is a one-take rodeo at this house. I don't care how bad it is, it's one take because I don't have time to go back. Oh, and my wife is having a scan later today, which meant she could not have coffee this morning when she got up. So it was like being in a house with a grizzly bear. I had to move very slowly, no quick movements, and wait for attack at any moment. Got through that. My mental process on making a film is typically either, so I have to make films for other people, namely blurb. And so blurb films and my films are totally different. Blurb films tend to be much more technical and far shorter. They may ask me for a 20-second film, a 30-second film, a 45-second film, and it has to have 6 ingredients. So those are interesting in the sense that technically they're hard for me because I don't know what I'm doing. So often I have to learn new techniques every time I do a film for blurb. For me, if you break down van life, bike life, everyday expedition, notes on photography, notes on layouts, I have a lot of different themes. Each theme requires a different mindset, but typically they come out of right field. I'll be on a conference call for work. I probably do 10 hours of conference calls a week, and sometimes I'm losing my mind. So I'm there, and it may just be like, right field, I'm gonna do a notes on photography, an image pops in, and I just start. I come here, I do this recording, I go in and do the screen grab in my other room, and I bang it out. The film that you were asking about in particular was the Photographing Place, which was about Paris. And that came because personally, I think that there is very little education online, especially on YouTube, about how to make actual photographs and how to make photographs that would interest or provide a foundation for becoming a professional. I think there's a lot of people talking about photography who have no training and they've never done anything like this. So I realized, coming to YouTube very, very late, that I had this whole career of education and mistakes where I went to photo school. I had the luxury of going to photojournalism school. I had the luxury of getting an internship that was supposed to last 3 months. It lasted a year and a half. I had the luxury of being picked up by a half a dozen other photographers as a first assistant. That I worked on commercial projects, I worked on editorial projects, I worked on documentary projects, I assisted for National Geographic, for Adidas, for Time, Newsweek, Life, all of these companies, and I got to see the industry from the ground level below a photographer who was already cemented in the industry. And those people are not on YouTube. The folks that are dominating YouTube, I don't know where they came from or what their backgrounds are. More power to them. They're dominating YouTube. It probably beats the hell out of a regular job. The Photographing Paris was just, that film came from frustration of making a bunch of films I didn't necessarily want to make, and seeing one of those images and saying to myself, oh, that was such a wonderful trip. I would love to share what it was like to be on that trip at that particular time. To be on an assignment, but then trying to compile a secondary theme for myself and sort of the dialogue that goes through your mind when things are working well or things are coming unraveled. And most of the time on assignments, at least something comes unraveled and you have to adapt. And that's the beauty of the difference between a consumer and a professional typically, is you can handle that. Question number 5. I know you're a busy man. Kinda. I do not make a living with photography. Good. I'm a machinist by trade that shoots on weekends. I love that. I wish I was a machinist. I've been shooting for 30 plus years, started out shooting in nature, Nikon had all the lenses, you know the routine. I bought an XT1 and 18-55. After 6 months or so, I sold all my Nikon stuff and bought 2 XT2s and a 35 f2 and a 23 f2. Got into street photography 4 or 5 years ago and have not looked back. Good on you. These will be silly questions, but listening to your talk on one camera, one lens, on advancing your photography, when you talk about shooting a 50mm on the Fuji XT2, are you using a 35 or a 50mm? I'm using the 50mm equivalent, which is a 35. So I have the 23 and the 35, which is equivalents are 35 and 50. So yes. Now, yeah, the same thing with my Speedmaster. It's a 35, which translates to a 50mm in 35mm. So I am using the equivalent. I've been shooting with 2 XT2s and 23 and 35, same as me. Early last year, I picked up an X Pro 2 with the COVID bullshit like most. I have not been shooting much. When I do go out and it's been with the X Pro 2 and one lens, it's so nice to carry little. So sorry for the long message, but I just felt the need to give you a little more background. No problem. Share whatever you want, but yes, I use the equivalent, the 35. And I have an XT2 that has the Speedmaster 0.95 on it. It will never come off. I will never take it off of that body. I haven't taken it off since the day I put it on because I have 2 XT2s and an XT4. The 4 is for motion primarily, although I'm not loving it for motion. I'm kind of disappointed, and hand holding it is impossible, even with the IBIS. So the XT4 is going to become a still camera, and I'll give one of the XT2s to my wife. I'll keep the second with the 50, and I'll use the XT4 as a still camera, and then I will use the Sony for motion, the GoPro, the 360 cam, and maybe something else if I get down the road and I need something else. But and the Fuji's fine on a tripod. But I thought I could hand hold that thing, and occasionally if you're shooting a landscape and you're not moving and you're holding it and the IBIS kicks on, you can do it. But anything else, there's way too much camera movement. But what I'm learning, so if you don't know Brian Storm from MediaStorm, check out mediastorm.com. Brian is a guy that I've known for a long, long time. He is one of the most intelligent photo industry people I've ever met. And Brian is doing stuff that you don't know about, and Brian is doing stuff that will absolutely peel your hair back. He is awesome, and he is one of these people that not only teaches workshops through MediaStorm, but he also is so happy to share all of his knowledge. And he told me a couple of years ago, I hadn't seen him in a while, I walked into one of his one-day seminars, and he saw me come in, and he looked at me from across the room, and he goes, "Milner, I know what you're thinking. You think you can do all of this on your own. Filmmaking is a team sport. It's not an individual sport." And it went in one ear and right out the other, because here I am all by myself. But Brian said to me, look, audio is key. If you're going to do a doc film, audio is key, and just leave your camera on a tripod. They're called rock shots, where the camera's on a tripod and things are moving through the screen instead of trying to do all this follow, gimbal, cinematic stuff that kind of looks like candy, but often does absolutely nothing for the story. And if you look at a MediaStorm film, they are so much better than any of those cinematic things that come out. And it's not that they don't have cinematic elements, but their storyline is so much better in how the story is being told. Every time someone sends me a link to a YouTuber that has cinematic content, I can't get through 30 seconds of the film. It's beautiful, and that's it. And I go, where is the story? Where's the project? And I actually see films on Netflix and Amazon now that are very much the same way. And that started when cameras came down in price and they went up in capability. When the Canon released the EOS 5, I think it was a 5D, my wife worked at Canon at the time, and she was a judge at the film festivals. And we suddenly, in the year the 5D came out, we got all these films from all over the world, and we're supposed to watch them all and then, judge them. And they were films that were done because of the 5D. No story, no script, bad acting, everything, but they were cinematically beautiful. We couldn't get through 10% of these films. They were terrible. So anyway, I digress. Question number 6, and these are hard. This is where we get to the heavy lifting. I've now got 45 plates on each side, like 6 out, like one of those bodybuilders in the baggy pants with a fanny pack, and I'm about to start doing squats. Number 6, what is your definition of a good photograph? For the love of God. Who asked this? What evil person asked this? So I guess in a nutshell, the best way to sum that up is whatever photograph you react to emotionally. It could be a spot news image. It could be those images of the Hindenburg catching on fire and crashing. It could be Nick Oots or Eddie Adams' image from Vietnam. Those are completely dramatic. I will never be able to forget those images. Are they aesthetically beautiful? Probably not. But is there a level of subject matter that seared itself into my brain? Absolutely. That's the difference between a photograph and content. Instagram, the online metrics world, that is content. That's why people are called content creators and not photographers. Photographers are an endangered species. Content creators are like locusts. They're all over the world now, and they're spewing stuff all day long. It's content. No one can make photography that fast or that often. So a good photograph is emotionally resonant. It hits you and you cannot forget it. It has nothing to do with equipment. It has nothing to do with materials. It has nothing to do with likes or subs or anything else. It is just what you emotionally respond to. I have a picture of my niece, who's now 13, when she's about 6, shot with a Hasselblad on the porch of my mom's cabin, and her shoes are on the wrong feet. She has her shoes on backwards, but doesn't know it, which is the beauty of the photograph, and she's laughing hysterically and she's missing teeth. And it's not because I grew up in the country that she's missing teeth. She's not a toothless yokel. She's just a young girl who's losing her teeth. And I look at that photo and I absolutely love it. She's laughing hysterical, it's a moment, and her shoes are on the wrong feet, which now I can hold against her for the rest of her life. That's a good photo. Question number 7, what's your definition of a portfolio image? The portfolio image is the cream of the crop. It's the single best thing you've ever done in that genre or that story. So for example, if I took my project I did in Sicily, let's say that there's 50 images overall, there's somewhere between 6 and 10 that would be in a portfolio. That would be the absolute cream of the crop. There's actually 2 themes. Inside the 50 images, there's 2 different styles of photographs, so I would have to split those. One style I think is lesser than the other. I would only take the best, and then I would edit ruthlessly until I'm down to just a handful of images that are the best, that signify this is the single best thing I can do. A portfolio is not a story. It typically does not tell a story. A portfolio is a way to get work, and a portfolio is consumed and digested and spit out in a matter of seconds. If you go to a portfolio review and you haven't done your editing, or you walk up with an iPad, for God's sakes, don't do that. Do not walk up with a laptop or an iPad. It sucks. I've done it. I've been on the receiving end where people walk up and they're like, oh, here's my portfolio. And I look at their iPad and look at the gallery or the folder and it says 550 images. And you're like, oi, you got to do your edit. No portfolio is that big. 25 images max. Have a second in reserve if you need to, if you have a great meeting and someone says, wow, this is fantastic, we love your work, what else do you have? Then you reach down and you go, here's my other printed portfolio. Walking up with a print portfolio is much better than a digital portfolio. Trust me, regardless of what the geeks say, that is the truth of how high level people are looking. If you make a print of something, you had to choose a paper, you had to pay for it, and there is some rationale in your head as to why you printed it. They may hate the image, but They want to hear why you did it. With digital, it's swipe, 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 and everyone just kind of goes, whatever. You know, you're a content producer. So portfolio is the best of the best, and people will make decisions about you within 15 seconds, 30 seconds, couple of minutes, and they know whether you're at the level they need or not. And so it's okay. If you're not at the level and you get slammed, or people say, you know, this just really isn't for us, that's totally fine, because right down the row is some other portfolio reviewer that's like, you are a stud. We love your work. Question number 8, how do you identify a person's photographic style? Probably just based on the content of their photographs. There are people who are chameleons that can do multiple things, believe it or not. And one of these people, who will remain nameless, was in my house, not in my house, he was outside my house 2 days ago. One of the best photographers walking planet Earth right now, someone who's been incredible for the last 30 years and whose work you have seen multiple times in multiple flavors, was here. And that's a great thing for me, because that's a guy that I stop everything I'm doing, and when I get one-on-one conversation time with him, I come out of it a better person, because he is so intelligent and so much more than a photographer. You can talk to him about anything. He's knowledgeable. We started talking about the Amazon, botany of the Amazon. So, and that was like seamless from publishing a blurb book to botany in the Amazon with him was beep, seamless. So, but he's a guy that can shoot celebrity portraits, commercial, advertising, fashion, portraits, doc work. He has multiple skills and businesses outside of photography, so that's rare. Most of the time, if I look at the books to my left here, I see Robert Frank, I see Gene Smith, I see Jacques Sturges, I see a Magnum book, I see Andrew Kaufman's Panama book, I see Herman Leonard's jazz portraits, I see Larry Towell's World from My Front Porch, Sam Abel, Gene Richards, Alex Webb, Cartier-Bresson, Kudelka, Eli Reed's Beirut book, which I'm going to do a thing on, Henry Hornstein's show book. These are people who have very consistent looks to their work throughout decades. So you look at an Alex Webb picture, he's a color reportage guy. I look at Henry Hornstein, he's a black and white fine art documentary photographer. It's based on content and consistency. Okay, number 9, and we're getting closer, we're almost done. Daniel Milnor, all caps, great exclamation point. That's the kind of comment I want to see, people. Don't do anything less. I had a couple random questions unrelated to photography. Oh, this is good. A good way to end. Let's just ease up from the whole photo nonsense, shall we? Let's just get back to a wider, broader, brighter world. Do you play chess? Yes, I do. I've noticed you using chess references, checkmate, stalemate, blunder in your talk sometimes. I do play chess. I would not say that I play particularly well, but I like chess, and I started to play chess as a child because we lived in the middle of nowhere, first in Indiana, then Wyoming, and I was by myself. I had a brother and sister, but we were at those ages where nobody wanted to hang out with each other. We just wanted to fight and like bite each other and pull each other's hair. You know, that phase that lasts about 18 years. So my father taught me to play chess when I was probably in first or second grade, and I just sucked, right? I still kind of suck, but I was bad back then. But when adults would come through and they would stay at our house, I would just come walking out with the chessboard and just get a beat down every single time. But I played chess with adults, and it was kind of fun. I think my uncle beat me once in like 4 moves. It was embarrassing. And he was the kind of guy to like hold it over me for the rest of my life. Hopefully he'll be dead soon. Just kidding. Okay, his second question is, what's your thoughts on the Quran? You've said once that you read most of it. Yeah, so the Quran is interesting. I did a project back in the mid-90s about what it was like to be Muslim and live in America. And this was prior to 9/11, and I hate to correlate those two things, but prior to 9/11, there was virtually no talk of the Muslim community in America at all. And I'd gotten an assignment in Tempe, Arizona, at the masjid in Tempe, and I went to photograph a guy who would come in from the Middle East, and I don't remember his name. And I get to the masjid, and there are like tens of thousands of people there. It's this huge event because the guy coming in from the Middle East is this big deal, and I'm clueless. And so I end up in the back of the mosque, and I'm like standing there. I stick out like a sore thumb, and I'm trying not to do what I'm not supposed to do, which I don't even know. This guy gets up on the podium. He starts talking, and about 2 minutes in, he freezes. And he's looking in the back of the masjid, and I'm saying to myself, wow, kind of looks like he's looking at me. But he wouldn't be looking at me. I don't even belong here. And so he stops speaking, climbs down off the podium, comes up the center aisle, and now I'm starting to sweat because I'm like, it looks like he's coming for me. My experience as a photographer is if someone's going to do that, you're in trouble and they're going to throw you out. That was not the polar opposite of what happened. He comes up in front of thousands of people and he says to me, "You are the best Muslim here." And I was like, slight correction, not a Muslim, not really religious at all. He said, "I don't care. I can see your aura. And your aura is putting off these now here's the thing. You might think that's totally woo-woo. I've never seen someone's aura that I can remember, but there are people who can. And I've been reading a lot about this lately. And some of these people who can are not people who are woo-woo at all. They have no explanation of how they can do it, but they can. And so at the time, I didn't know this. And I was like, whoa, that sounds kind of weird. He took off his entire outfit, folded it up and gave it to me in front of all these people. And now I'm like pouring sweat and thinking, how am I going to make a picture? Because my editor at the paper is going to yell at me if I come back without something. That sort of piqued my interest about the whole religion. And I realized I didn't know anything about Islam. When I went to high school in Texas, Texas is such a powerhouse in the school book buying procedure that Texas makes their history books whatever they want. They make their history books in middle school and high school make it look like Texas is the best. There's no talk of how Texas actually came to be part of America. Any religion outside of Christianity is completely skewed in these textbooks. And I remembered when this guy's standing in front of me and I'm thinking to myself, I remember high school history class where it had all the world religions and Islam got a paragraph. And the only thing it showed was a mujahideen fighter in Afghanistan and it said Muslim. That was it. And so we jumped over it and moved on back to Christianity. So I was like, wow, this is interesting. I don't know anything about the Islamic religion. So I started to do some research and what I found was astounding and very interesting to me. And I started slowly trying to invest in this story. And I spent probably 4 years working on this project. It was very difficult because there was a lot of skepticism and suspicion about me, rightly so, because typically the media covers Islam twice a year. Ramadan and terrorism. And those two things are always seeming to be linked. I think every religion has extremists, whether you're talking about Judaism, Christianity, Islam. But with Islam, it tends to be the radicals get the majority of the attention, which is odd because the religion, when you start to study it, and I did read most of the Quran, it was a battle. It was really hard. I find the Talmud, actually there's the similarities between the Talmud and the Quran are pretty interesting, but I find the Bible, the Talmud, and the Quran all very difficult to read. I've tried over and over again to read the entire Bible. I have a really hard time with it. It's just hard. I don't know, for whatever reason. I did not grow up in a religious household, but I do enjoy studying about Islam and also reading the Quran. And I read that back in the 90s when I was doing the project. The only way that I got to do that project was meeting the director of the National Council on Islamic Education who worked as a liaison. I met him in person, told him what I wanted to do, showed him some photographs, and he said, "I'll help you, but just know this isn't going to be easy." And so I spent 4 years and then I just ran out of resources and had to stop. You said once, blah, blah, blah. Do you have children? No. I'm too immature and selfish for children. You seem like the most interesting dad a child would wish for. I don't know. Not unless that kid's off a little bit. If that kid's like spoiled milk, I don't know. Maybe I am a good guy. Does Blurb do coffee table traditional books? Yes, both in print on demand, meaning one at a time, and offset custom traditional coffee table books. Number 5, your top 3 favorite movies of all time. P.S. Your For What It's Worth podcast is absolutely amazing. Can't get enough. Keep it up. I'm sorry, but I stopped my For What It's Worth podcast. No particular reason. No one listened to that podcast. I mean, besides you and 7 other people, nobody really listened to it. I did it because I love recording audio. And audio is so simple compared to films that it was just fun and easy to do. So For What It's Worth is gone. Top 3 favorite movies of all time. Smoking the Bandit 1, 2, and 3, of course. No, I don't know. I have to think about that and get back next time because there are just too many good movies out there. So that was Q&A 16. I appreciate you sending me the questions. Just remember, I'm one guy with one opinion, and I hope this was helpful. And if you have more questions, send them in and I'll be happy to answer them. Adios.